Good afternoon, everybody, and everybody online this is the November 28th meeting of the Rotary Club of Raleigh. I hope everybody had a fantastic, restful Thanksgiving holiday, and it's great to see everybody back as we swing into the holidays as we wind down November. Tommy is delayed with his daughter at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Patty, who I saw online, called in sick today, so couldn't make it in. So I'm going to do the invocation and then lead everybody in the pledge. So if everybody would pause for a moment and I'll do the invocation with our friends beside us and no person beneath us, with the bonds of Rotary between us and our worries behind us, and with our goals before us and no task beyond us, with a thirst for knowledge, we are thankful for Rotary friends and the meal we are about to share. Amen. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. Everybody remember, please, the red buckets in the middle of the table all benefit the Dementia Alliance of North Carolina. Anything you can put in there is helpful, and we have a little monopoly money bill. If you don't have change with you, just write $1, $2, whatever you want on there and put it in, and then you'll be billed. Also, Charlie, you want to handle? I think it's probably a good time for Happy Dollars. I do have to tell you, I mean, I don't know which way it's going to go. At least the sports related Happy Dollars. There was a magical 90 minutes this past Saturday afternoon, late in the afternoon, when there was Tar Heel football going into overtime against NC State, and then Tar Heel basketball against Iowa State, Phil Knight Classic out in Portland. And then at the same time, I saw Cal Berkeley was playing my alma mater, UCLA. So the remote in the Packer house was just going, it's crazy like this. Now, I know that all turned out very well this weekend for the Tar Heels, but nonetheless, it's got to be some state Happy Dollars, not others. Are they right? Gary?
Another one, my nephew plays in Millbrook High School, and they knocked off number 1 Hillside Friday night as well.
Orange State money coming in. Okay.
I can see the glad the game is in.
Okay, good. Next one. Just a reminder of upcoming meetings. Our last regular meeting of the year is next week. It'll be a fun meeting with Professor from NC State talking about the French gratitude train that came here after World War II. But then December 14th is a reminder. We have our annual holiday luncheon Wednesday, December 14th. And it is complimentary to all members, and it's complimentary to a guest if you'd like to bring friend, spouse, significant other, colleague at work. If you want to bring more guests, and there's the applicable fee for that. But for those of you new to the club, it's a lot of fun. This is our kind of first full holiday banquet we've had for 2 or 3 years now. Although we still moving in last year at the city club. But it's a lot of fun. You get to mingle with members. Everybody comes dressed up in their holiday finest. We again will have entertainment. And the kids can wait for us, which will be great. And we'll have a Toys for Tot drive and the Sumptus buffet. So it's a lot of fun. Holiday season, mid-December time of year. This afternoon, the e-bike invitation will be sent out to everybody. So please respond, especially by December 8th, so we have a head count for it. And then we'll take a holiday break for 2 or 3 weeks actually, and come back on January 10th with another interesting topic out of Raleigh and the end of the Civil War, what happened here. Kurt.
Just a reminder, the Toys for Tot collection will be at the holiday party. So bring an unwrapped toy, and I recommend if you go just walk inside after ringing the bell, buy some toys, put them in your truck, and then drop them off at the holiday party. And we'll run them over to the Marine Reserve who distributes stuff.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Kurt. And people online, if you didn't hear all that, bring an unwrapped toy, please, to the holiday luncheon. And it works out great. If you're ringing at Walmart, step in, pick 1 or 2 up, and then bring them, and they'll all be collected, and Kurt will be in charge of taking them off. Randy? Well, whatever that Monday is. Okay. Thank you. I know you're paying attention now. It'll be the second Monday in January. We'll meet after our holiday break. One thing I did want to announce though too is that we are not collecting, we've done it a time in the past, I know, we will not be collecting food donations at the holiday lunch this year. Instead, we have set up a way for you to contribute online to the Raleigh Urban Ministries of Wake County Food Pantry. And the way you can do this is go to our website. And in the right-hand corners, click on Donate Now. And then that will take you to over here. And you have 4 choices of where to donate your money. Our foundation, Wake Smiles. If the Southeast Raleigh Club has a project going on at the time, we have the space for them. We've added though the Urban Ministry Food Pantry until the end of December. So if you'd like to donate, that money will go directly to their food pantry. So please keep that in mind. Nosy neighbor, we're passing over because we have so much today, and Tommy's making his way here still in the D&E. So we'll pick that up. Before we get to membership though, I did want to talk about or mention the guests we have today. We have several guests. I'm just going to go from left to right, and it's great to see one of our members, former members, don't know exactly how to describe her, always a member from Switzerland, Jim Dorset's daughter, Elise. It's great to have you here today. And Lisa and her husband are living and working in Switzerland, and it's just great to see you. And if you recall from the Pray for Angels program we had about how to talk about politics, Pete took a chance and brought his friend Ivan. We're here again today, Pete.
Well, and I also disagree about college athletics, so it's a good thing. I tolerate Raleigh Carolina fans.
Okay. Well, it's great to have you. And Charlie, if you want to come up and introduce your guests, just you have them, don't you? Right, and so the people on the Zoom can see it, but they are the ones again. If you don't mind, gentlemen. There we go. Pardon me.
Thank you, President Tom. I have with me two of my friends from our Hayesburg Methodist Church men's group, John Cates. Originally grew up in Chapel Hill with the church with Pete Smith. His family farm has Ramsey's, and he's been the NC State man. John's a Trans-On Fox real estate auction. And my other friend Lee Flowers, you may remember, NC State man, helped with a good NC State basketball program about a year ago. He's been real estate with CBRE, so Lee and John. Right?
And Heather, you brought one of your colleagues today. Would you like to introduce her, please?
Yes. Hi, guys. This is Morgan Salvers, Starting Director of Development with Metro Alliance of North Carolina, and we're happy to have her on board. So I wanted to introduce her here at Rotary.
Great, welcome. And again, Heather and her colleague work with the Metro Alliance of North Carolina, where our red buckets, the money in there goes to. So please remember to support them. And we have Jennifer Rodriguez back, right? Jennifer, it's great to have you back. If I can just say, Jennifer came a couple of meetings ago, and it's great to have you back. Jennifer, as I recall, you work for Trans World, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you want to stand up, and they are in the business of selling, helping people buy and sell commercial businesses. And Jennifer moved down here from Pennsylvania. It's great to have you back again, Jennifer. And I guess last but not least, we have Eric, GC Jones' mother, Heather. Heather, would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
Hi, y'all. I'm Heather Stevens Jones. I am from the Task Force Club of District 7390 in gorgeous but very cold Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I have been Rotarian of the Year, new Rotarian of the Year, in service above sub-Rotarian of the Year, which is pretty interesting considering I didn't hear about Rotary until my 30s, right? But I'm so very proud of my son, Eric Juicy Jones, for becoming a Rotarian. And I just want you all to know that you hit the lottery. Thank you.
Well, Eric hasn't become just a Rotarian. He's become one of our head fundraisers and all around cheerleaders with the club. So I don't know if we do that. Also one little thing I wanted to get or mention, it was in the very bottom of the weekly bulletin if you read it this morning, but I just wanted to emphasize it again. You know, one unique thing about Rotary is that, again, wherever you go around the world, there are Rotary clubs. And if you're traveling for business or pleasure, and I've done it, others of you have done it, you go to a meeting of another Rotary club, they'll welcome you with open arms. They're always glad to see somebody from a different part of the world, or part of the country. David Forrest has a trip planned coming up to, I believe, Germany and Poland. And so, David, we have a couple of club banners for you to give to those clubs and come back with some interesting stories and some banners too.
Thank you, President Tom.
Well, great. So we'll head right into membership then. Harrison, you want to come up and take us there? Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. And man, I wish I knew that Juice's mom was going to be here. I would have asked for baby pictures so we could have. Please do. We'll be more than happy to take those. So today we have the pleasure of doing a re-induction of a past member, as well as an induction of a new member. So if I could please have Mike and Miles, please join me up front. Mary, is she here? Haven't seen her. And then also Jim Dorset, would you please come up front as well? You can stand over here by me.
I'm a big supporter and fan of both of these gentlemen. The returning and the new.
Very excited to have them. Both Mike and Miles' membership applications have been reviewed and approved in accordance with our club's constitution and bylaws. And we will now proceed to admitting you both into the membership of the Rotary Club as well. First, we have a few questions for you. Question one, please.
Now, Mike, will you join us as we strive to live a life of service above self? Yes. Yeah.
Number two,
Will you join us in our activities for service projects and fundraising activities in support of our community? Yes.
and will you join us in supporting Rotary's efforts worldwide which focus on these 7 areas? Promoting peace, disease prevention, providing clean water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education and literacy, economic and community development, and protecting the environment.
Yeah, yes.
And fellow Rotarians, will you join me in fostering and supporting Mike and Miles as they join us in pursuing our pursuit of adding value to our community through service above self? If so, please say I do. You. Now, Jim, if you would please provide Miles here. It's hot.
Thank you for no longer having sticky pen.
Yes, the new magnet pins are wonderful. Thank you.
Not that anybody changes.
Congratulations to you both. And Rotarians, if you would please join me in welcoming Miles and Mike. Thank you so much.
Actually, I think we're right before we get to service. We're gonna go to a foundation. I call Eric Larson to talk about a couple of developments. Nice. Positive development wire. That we have going on in the foundation area.
Yeah, and Jim, don't get too comfortable. If you would come back up, please. Today we have an induction for another Paul Harris Fellow for our friend Jim. Jim's a man of many, many accomplishments. He's made lots of contributions, but if you ask him, I'm sure he would agree that the greatest contribution he's made are his children. And it's so great to have a niece with us today. But Jim also, besides his professional accomplishments, is a very dedicated Rotarian, a former president of this club, and he continues to honor Rotary with his giving. He gives to both the Club Foundation and Rotary International. And today we are recognizing him with what's called a Paul Harris Fellowship +4. In other words, this is his 5th Paul Harris Fellowship being received. If you can do math, if you went to state, for example, that would mean $5,000 of cumulative contributions he's made over time to this club. So we want to honor him with that. And we'll present him with a pin in a moment, but we want to also talk about what Rotary does with the funds that are raised there. And one of the focus areas for Rotary over the last several years has been the availability of water and clean sanitation around the world. More children die every single day from the lack of access to clean water and clean sanitation than all other diseases combined. If you took the entire population of North America, added to it the entire population of Europe, that would be the number of people in the world who do not have access to clean water and to good sanitation. So water is not a boring topic, it's a vital topic. And Rotarians like Jim, through the giving that they have done to Rotary International Foundation, have sponsored water projects all over the world. So I'm pleased, I won't try to pin it on him, I'm pleased to present Jim with his 5th level Paul Harris Fellow. Congratulations. Thank you for everything you do for Rotary. And once again, let's stand and honor Jim. Great, Jim, thank you so much. Congratulations. Thank you, Eric.
For service, our service project, as you know, very end of November through December is the Salvation bell ringing. And Richard, I think we're gonna have Bill come up and talk about the bell ringing. Then I have a little something I'm gonna do. Let's see how it goes. But Bill, Roar, do you want to come? There you go. Now, this next photo is fresh as of about 90 minutes ago. There you go. Started. Bill and Charlie were out there. They said, "I'll text me these photos."
So we're off and running, out there 10 and, got everything set up and, Charlie calls me. So, we're gonna do it for till Christmas Eve. Everybody get on, sign up Genius. If you can't, let me know and, I'll help you navigate through it. Please sign up. Few things to remember for anybody new. You're first there, the kettle will be located in the customer service area. And once your shift is completed at night, if the driver hadn't shown up, then most likely the driver will be there before you finish. Take it back in there and let's see what else. If you decide that you want to contribute by a check or whatever, make sure that you do place it in the kettle. A lot of people will mail checks to Salvation Army, but we'll have a difficult time trying to get credit of that, so please do that. Anything else anybody think of? Anybody got any questions with regard to it? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you might have mentioned it. If you're first, do you pick up everything back in the customer service area?
Yes. So if you're the 10 o'clock, it'll be there. And then, also on the back of the sign, there is some phone numbers, so pay attention to that. If you need help, you can reach out to the people there. If for another thing, if for some reason you're there and your shift ends and you need to leave and the next person hadn't shown up, take that back into customer service. Also, if for some reason you can't make your shift, please go online and delete your name so someone else will have the opportunity to sign up. Just don't text me at 5 minutes before you're supposed to be there and let me know. I appreciate that. So, anything else anybody can think of? All right, let me know. Please get out there and I'll leave there.
Great, thanks, Bill. I've had a couple. I've had a couple members from other clubs already contact me, asking me if they can help us ring bells. I said, sure. And I sent them the sign up Genius. Like, this is tomorrow's, I did this yesterday afternoon, but this is tomorrow's sign up. So you can see almost all the slots are taken. I was really pleasantly surprised at how many people had signed up before we actually started. November 28th all the way to the 24th. So it's nice to see. I'm gonna do something now. In 2014, it was our 100th year. I had just barely joined the club then, and remember, I think Reagan Weaver was our president then, but he hired a very well-known writer in North Carolina, poet laureate type level writer, to write a play about our Rotary Club and Rotary, what it means to us. And he did so. Part of that play had to deal with us ringing the bell. So this is a 2-minute one-act play. But the part that struck me as to the reason that we're out there, and just to set the scene, it's it's a cold 6:30, 7 o'clock. It's high 30s, low 40s. The wind's blowing around front of a Walmart, and there's an older member, experienced member, and then there's a new younger member standing right next to him. And that new member hadn't rung bells before. What's this all about? Why do we do it? And this question to why can't we just write a check? I'm going to write a check. I'm successful. I'm here in a beautiful, jacket, wool coat, and everything. And so this has to do with the interplay between the older member and the younger member. And you can actually follow along. The younger member will be me when I have the red cap on. So the younger member says, We want to make as much money as we can for Salvation Army, right? The more we raise, the better. That's our goal. Experience number. Our goal is a functioning community, a civilization where people see a need and decide to fill it, where they connect with each other in service. That's why we're out here, to connect with each other, you and me, and maybe your fellow members of the community too. The money, well, it's a nice side effect. Okay, I get that, sure, but couldn't we do this someplace where it's not so cold? Experience member says, only that it's right for us to feel what the less fortunate feel. Imagine the man or woman without a home. This is as warm as they will be today, or tonight, or tomorrow. These men and women are part of our community too. And just as time out here builds a connection between you and me, it connects us to them as well. The people who share the street with us, whose faces we must learn to see, who are themselves often the first to put coins in the kettle. A little discomfort, and it's a very little, but it does a job. It keeps us who are so comfortable already from forgetting that comfort should never be taken for granted. It's an extraordinary blessing, and we're meant to be grateful. Well, why do you do it year after year after year in the cold? An experienced member ends by saying, well, sometimes I get to know someone I really know otherwise. Sometimes we can talk, and sometimes I even get to teach a successful young new member that there's more to service than writing a check. Sometimes I get to do that, and someday you will too.
Bravo.
Sign up. Yeah. Okay, great. But I hope that captures the spirit of what we're doing. It's not just raising money. That's the important part. It's getting to know each other when that happens. But it is getting to know. Yeah, my favorite line is the people who we're interacting with, who are putting coins in the kettle, some putting in money that you don't think they can afford, but those are the faces we must learn to see. That's a very important part of it. So anyway, please sign up on the Sign Genius and have a great holiday season doing that. Next, before we get to our speaker, Randy Giroux on December 3rd has a birthday. Anniversaries, Eric and Susan Stevens. Eric is our former president a couple of years ago. 30 years, and Gary and Paul Sucker have an anniversary on December 4th. So congratulations, Gary and Paul. So I'd like to get to our speaker today, and as you know from the promotions, this has to do with the University of Carolina at Chapel Hill. Last year we had, I think his name was Tim Pelter, right? From who talked to us about the history of NC State basketball. But Ron is going to talk to us about Carolina basketball. And I bought his book as a birthday present for my wife Leslie. His birthday was just a couple weeks ago. And I put in an email to Ron after reading it. It's an amazing book. He'll show you. It's a coffee table sized book, but the factual research that went into it, and I don't know where he got some of these photographs and newspaper clipping. It's really just amazing. So you'll enjoy it if you do get it. I think you'll enjoy hearing Ron. Let me read a short bio, the background of Ron. Ron Smith is a native of Charlotte and graduated from UNC in 1978 with a degree in radio, television, and motion pictures. Following graduation, Ron entered the Columbia Seminary in Atlanta in 1983, graduating with a Master's of Divinity in 1987. And from 1989 until 2018, Ron served as a pastor in the Presbyterian Church. Along the way, Ron continued to be involved with sports, writing for various sports publications. In 2005, Ron's wife, Jan, unfortunately, is undergoing treatment for cancer at Duke. And Ron began researching the history of the UNC basketball program. And following Jan's death the following year in 2006, the research became a way of Ron to work through his grief. But the result is the Tar Heels, the history of UNC basketball, Volume 1. He intends to write 2 more editions. Four, okay. I was gonna say it's part of a trilogy. I don't know what the equivalent for 4. But there'd be
Well, you couldn't
one out of
do-
4 books.
You couldn't do one on Dean Smith and you couldn't do one on Roy Williams.
Okay. Anyway, volume 1 that I referenced, was released, last year, 2021. And volume 2 is scheduled to be released, next spring in 2023. So that, please welcome Ron Smith. Yeah, and, you can make sure you speak, so our people in Zoom, need to hear you, right the microphone, yeah, just speak, good as you can.
I've been speaking for a number of years and.
Right, I bet you have.
I know that I'm supposed to adjust the microphone. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. And, how's this? Is this good? Yeah. So, first of all, before I get started, again, I've been speaking as a pastor for 35 years. And God gave me this really, really serious face. But I'm anything but. I grew up wanting to be a comedian. Seriously, I was a class clown in school. And instead I became a pastor, so I guess that's kind of. Yes. So anyway, in public speaking, learning to speak, preach, in seminary, I guess 40 years ago. One thing you try to do, and you've seen this with a lot of folks, is you tell a joke to get started, to try to win the audience over, likability. So I've got this photo of the campus at UNC Chapel Hill at Carolina. And the reason I'm starting with this is because there's this fella that I went to high school with. And he's a huge NC State fan. And when we were juniors, which was 1973, we skipped school on Thursday and drove to Greensboro to the ACC tournament. I'm a big Carolina guy. He's a state guy. That's the year State went 27-0 with David Thompson as a junior, as a sophomore. So anyway, I talked to Ronnie this summer, he's been at a television station in Charlotte since we graduated from high school, and trying to get some memorabilia from this television station to use for the book. Because WSOC in Charlotte had this all sports network in the 60s. And so he told me a story, and again, I'm always thinking funny. And so he tells me this story. He said, yeah, I know you love the Tar Heels, and I love the Wolfpack. And so a couple of years ago, I went to the State of Carolina game in Chapel Hill. And I pulled up, and the policeman stopped me, and said, as far as parking. And so I stuck my head out the window and I said, could you show me where the building is where they offer the paid classes? I thought that was funny. So anyway, we start out with a joke. As you can see, I've got khaki on it, brown. When I've gone to Duke, Carolina, or State, Wake Forest, wherever, I always dress neutral. I don't wear red, I don't wear blue, I don't wear black, I don't wear royal blue. And in fact, one year, I got a ticket outside Cameron. And this was when you could afford a ticket. You can't afford one now. But it's UNC and Duke, and I bought a ticket for $100. And I go in and sit with this Duke, hired Duke, and I always behave, no matter where I go, I behave. After the game, he said, "Well, call me anytime if you ever want to go to a game," because he didn't know who I was. He didn't know who I was. So I always dress like this. So that's the joke. I grew up in a family where my grandfather loved Duke. My father loved Duke. When my brother was born in 1951, and in 57, he was 6 years old when UNC won the national championship. And so he became a UNC fan in 1957, even though my grandfather and father were Duke fans. So then when I was born in 56, I'm 4 or 5 years old. My brother's born for Carolina. I became a Carolina fan. And in my second book, which will be out in the spring. In my acknowledgements, I thank my brother, eternally, because if it were not for him, I'd be a dude. So let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so I grow up, actually, this is the second photo. So I grew up in a family that loves sports. My dad took me to Kenan Stadium when I was 5 years old. In my first game, LSU and the Tar Heels, I became a Carolina fan. And this is in 1966. My dad took me to a game and took his camera with him and took a picture of me and Coach Smith's autograph. So at that point in time in 1966, when I'm 2 years old, I start saving everything. And so then growing up, we go to all these games. I thought the state fans here would enjoy this photo. It's one reason I put it up here. Can anybody tell me when this is? Not 74. I was in the 8th grade this year, working at the Charlotte Coliseum. And this is a Sports Illustrated photo because they shot that tournament in 1970. This guy on the right is one of my best friends that I've known since we worked at the Coliseum. His name's Mark Eastep. I was behind him. He's shaking Ed Leftwich's hand after beating South Carolina in the 1970 ACC championship game to keep South Carolina from going to the tournament. I include this photo just to give you a background a little bit on how long I've been following this and been intimately involved in it, and going to games. And so again, growing up, really involved in sports. Went to UNC, graduated in 78. The plan was sports administration, be involved in sports in some way. And somewhere in there, I got a call into the ministry and went to seminary and in Atlanta, Presbyterian minister. So along the way, as the bio said, I continued to write sports. I helped Art Chansky. Did anybody ever see the illustrated history of ACC basketball that was released in 1989, 88? I helped Art with that, and Ron Moritz wrote it. Ron has been very helpful in editing all that I've written for my books. But all along the way, as I was in a church, I still wrote sports. And so then moving up to 2005, still pastoring in Charlotte. My wife, Jan, there on the left, was diagnosed with cancer in 2005 and 2004, somewhere in there. So we were doing treatment at Duke. And one day in one afternoon, we went to Barnes and Noble. And I bought this book and I said to her, this is the coolest book I've ever seen. And I bought it. And it was Rolling with the Stones by Bill Wyman, who was the bass player for the Stones. And it saved everything since day one in 1962 when the Rolling Stones started. So I said to her, I said, I wish somebody would do a sports book, not necessarily Carolina, but anybody, the Packers, the Alabama football, Kentucky basketball. A book full of memorabilia that's really cool looking. And that's what this was. And she said, why don't you do Carolina? And I said, if you're a priest, I could do anything like that. And so she said, well, you've saved everything for 30, 40 years. I think you could do this. So I started going to the library at Duke, and she was doing treatment of all places. Duke is where this idea kind of developed. And I would look up articles to get my mind off of her situation while she was doing treatment. And this right here is from 1906. And this would be the first basketball game in the area. Trinity, which became Duke in 1924, and Wake Forest played in 1906. Wake Forest won 24-10. That's one of the articles I came across when she was doing treatment. So then I started playing with, would be a good word, with history. Started in microfilm in 1910 with UNC. And so then, as Tom mentioned, it says in my bio, it became a grief project. Got me up in the morning. This is the first article of UNC basketball ever from 1911, January, February 1911. So everything started coming together
and I started thinking about doing this book. And as I said, it became a brief project and would get me up in the morning to do all this minutia. I know that people would look at what I had done early on and say, man, you got more time on your hands, you know what to do with it. And I'd say, yeah, I do. I actually, this gets me up in the morning. If anybody who's ever been through brief, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, the book, this kind of starts with what I've done. The book is full of stories and anecdotes. And I know that when you go back to the teens and 20s and 30s and 40s, most people do not want to read page after page of words about the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So what I tried to do was come up with a lot of memorabilia and pictures and newspaper articles. And this guy on the right, very interesting story here about the beginning of the game in 1891, 1892. That Frank Mayhem is his name. And again, the book is full of anecdotes and stories. And I'm a storyteller based on what I've been doing the past 40 years. I always try to have stories in my sermons to make them interesting. And this guy, Frank Mayhem, what Springfield College in Massachusetts did was they trained people to work in YMCAs. And so James Naismith had this class, 10 and 15 guys. Sorry, but there weren't any women in the store at that point, but 10 or 15 guys, and taught this new game to them in December of 1891. This guy on the right, Frank Mayhem, was the leader of the class, and Naismith knew that if Mayhem bought into it, then it would go. So Mayhem did buy into it. He's the one who actually named the sport basketball. Well, when these guys graduated from Springfield College, they would go on to direct YMCAs. So Frank Mayhem graduated in 1893, and of all places, he ended up in Charlotte YMCA. So he's there from 1893 to 1899. And during the time he's in Charlotte, he teaches kids, adults, whoever, to play basketball. So four of these kids in the late 1890s that he taught how to play basketball ended up at Chapel Hill 10 years later as college students and began the program at UNC. So the UNC basketball program is a direct link to the leader of James Naismith's class where he taught the game of basketball. And that's, again, what I tried to do in this entire book is have stories and anecdotes that were interesting. Okay, so now getting into the book, what I've done with every year beginning in 1911, first book goes to 1961, is the first spread of every season. I did a story recap of every season. Team pictures, I don't know if this is the case at Duke or NC State, but at UNC, but the little bit that I did look into Duke and NC State was pretty much the same. When you would go back this far into the teens and 20s and it had their team picture in their archives, all it said was basketball team underneath. Didn't have any other identified. Very few of them were identified. So I spent a stupid amount of time going through the yearbooks, identifying every player in every team picture. Now, one reason I did that is because there's both volume and the other volumes. And I'll say this about Duke, and I'll make a statement about Duke and State, both UNC. These programs didn't start with Dean Smith, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Valvano. You know, you got Everett Case, you've got Frank McGuire, and Dick Bubas. And so what I've tried to do is go back and recognize everybody who ever played and coached. And you can do the same thing at State or Duke, because I'm just happy to be Carolina. So, and then there's the article, first game article. But I think people kind of forget that we around here have this great basketball that's gone back a long way before Coach K, before Dean Smith, before Valvano and Norm Sloan. Most people know the Everett Case story. Then I also, from 1910, 11 to 1950, they didn't have the statistics Some of the scores weren't correct. In this particular year, I found an article from December 13th, where they played the Weeksville YMCA, and they didn't have that in their archives. Now, what I'm thinking, you're laughing at the YMCA, and that's who they played. Those are the best teams in that day, because there wasn't an NBA, and all the former college players went and played for the YMCA's. So when Duke and State and Carolina played the Durham YMCA or the Greensboro YMCA, those are the toughest games on the schedule. And people always go back and start, well, of course they won this many games. You know, they played the YMCA's. The YMCA's were the best team around. And then also with the rosters that I just showed you. And again, I don't want to sound arrogant saying this, but when I would go back originally and they would have in the UNC archives, the blue book, and it had the scores and then the 11th, I was finding 11 who never played, and then people in the box scores who weren't 11. So I contacted Steve Kirshner, and I said, Steve, I want to act like I know everything, and I'm a know-it-all, and be presumptuous and all this. I said, but I'm finding some inconsistencies here. And so he said, go for it. You know, so when I say correct rosters, these are correct rosters that I pulled from the box scores of people who actually played. Because I went through every box score beginning in 1911 all the way up. And then I found their hometowns in the yearbook, found their heights in the yearbook. And again, trying to make it look like a roster that you would see in a program today. And then the statistics, they're using all this information you can see now in their archives, because they didn't keep statistics from 1911 to 1947, something like that. Now this is pretty cool here. With each season, I do a bio on 2 or 3 players. And this is the captain of the 1917 or 1918 team. His name is Buzz T. And you see the Rotary magazine. He was the president of Rotary International in 1958. So this is page 53 of the book. So to show you this is a real thing, this is actually in the book, and I didn't put it together this morning to show you. It's actually a page in the book. Buzz Tennant, his brother, Randy Tennant was the captain the year before. So there's bios for every year. Now we're going to get into stories. This is the first time UNC and Wake Forest played, which was 1912. That's the old Raleigh Auditorium. Above it, that's the game article. UNC Carolina defeats Wake Forest. Now, this is one of my favorites. You know, we all have names for each other. We agree with that. So apparently in 1913, they called them the Farmers. But the A&M Farmers, which became NC State, played Carolina State won. But this is what I love. This is what I love. The editorial of that game, the editorial, where it talks about nobody killing each other. Not even a riot. Not even a riot. That's one of my favorite things when I think of also. I love this thing so much. You know, when you find this old stuff, it's always got dots and cuts. And I spent probably a couple hours cleaning it up to where it looked fresh. But I love, you know, anything that is really unique like this, which is one of the best little anecdotes in the entire book. I always spend a little bit of time cleaning it up. Then the Duke game from 1920. Of course, it was Trinity. Duke. Anybody know when Duke came to? He guesses. Nobody cares. Apparently, we don't have anybody here who cares about Duke. 1924, Trinity became Duke because of the Duke endowment. And does anybody know why it was Trinity?
It was in Trinity.
Does anybody know where Trinity is?
Here are still.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not named after the Holy Trinity. It's named after a town in Guilford County. Is Archdale, I know Archdale is a Trinity in Guilford or Randolph.
It's, Trinity, I think it's Randolph.
Okay, yeah, you pass it when you're on 85, but anyway, it's Trinity.
By the way, Jim's grandfather played on the Trinity team.
Yeah, he was-
7 to the 10.
I know he was here at night, he played center on the 1910, Trinity basketball.
Wow, that's cool.
He was 6'4", he was a big man.
Well, that's another reason I look for the heights, because it's fun to watch it go like this, 5, 6, 7 foot over the years. And then I'll share a little thing, something with you. I probably shouldn't share, but this was the football program. I did find this football program, Trinity and UNC, and I just added basketball too. I'm sure they didn't have a program for that, but I think there's a box score for that, and that's Billy Carmichael. Anybody remember Billy Carmichael? Now, a little comment about the 1924 national champions. Again, I got a story, a recap of every season. And for the state folks sitting here who think this is bogus, you know, that UNC has this in their arena. I can assure you, Kansas, Kentucky, and everyone else who won Helms Foundation national championships before the NCAA has those banners up in their arena, and they ain't taking them down. So in Carolina's case, if you go back, and again, just let the research speak for itself. There's no question, can't be argued. State dominated the late 40s and 50s. We all agree with that. Carolina dominated the teams. I mean, they won like 5 out of 6 Southern Conference tournaments and no one else won 2. They won 5. And they were in the Southern Conference with Kentucky from 1921 to 1932, and Kentucky didn't win one Southern Conference tournament. Carolina completely dominated. So national championship for one of those years, undefeated. And then the year before they were undefeated also. And so they could have had 2 undefeated seasons in consecutive years, 23 and 24. But Carmichael, the best player, got the flu, and they lost in the Southern Conference tournament because he was sick. So I think it's a legitimate national championship. Kentucky thinks theirs is, Kansas thinks theirs is, and anybody else who won one. So, and that's fine if you disagree, we'll still be friends. Now this is good. 1932, they come back and beat Kentucky in the Southern Conference tournament, and they come, you know, they were down 36-27, and came back and won. And that's equivalent to today being down like 25 points. I mean, to come back from 9 points was incredible. Adolph Rupp was so mad after the game, true story, so mad. He says, you know what? We're not going to play in this tournament next year. We're just going to do our own thing. Well, 6 months later, he and others formed the Southeastern Conference. So he didn't come back to the Southern. Okay, this gets into photos. You're talking about where all the great photos. I spent an incredible amount of time finding photos. What I wanted to do in this is, and this goes for all the schools when they put out histories of Duke, State, Carolina, it doesn't matter. A lot of times they end up just going to sports information using the same photos over and over. Well, what I did is, I contacted Sports Illustrated. I contacted that first photo I showed you of the 1970 ACC tournament. That's from Bruce Roberts, who was shooting for Sports Illustrated at that time. And I contacted Bruce, and he had lots of slides that he's let me use from various ACC tournaments. I just share that because I went to a lot of trouble researching photos. And so, and this is a really interesting story. And this is really hard to believe, hard for me to believe, that Charlotte, Raleigh, and Durham did an incredible job back to the 40s of archiving their negatives in chronological order. So the Charlotte Library has the Charlotte Observer, UNC Library has the Durham Herald, and the Library of North Carolina has the News and Observer. Negatives, chronological order. You go to LA, you go to Washington Post, Atlanta, they all throw them away. Greensboro threw them away, Winston threw them away. The photos that I've got, I've set for the past 10 years looking through negatives. And my theory was that they go to a game and shoot 50 shots and use one for the paper. So 90% of these photos have never been published. And so this one right here, I love this picture here from Larry Brown. 1960, the last Dixie Classic. That's Larry Brown after, I guess they beat two, I think they beat you. But anyway, kind of getting into one way I got this done is I had the idea to do this, but I know you don't do anything by yourself. So I have friends that I went to school with back in the 70s. And one of them is a guy named Dave Hanners, who played for Coach Smith and then coached with Larry in the NBA for 15 years. He also coached with Coach Smith. Dave helped me, and Phil Ford and Dave Chadwick all were just incredible in my help. So I got to know Larry Brown. He did the forward for the book. I got to know Larry through Dave. So a month ago, I was going to the Pitt games in Chapel Hill. And I stopped by Dave's because he's got books. He's got a big garage. He keeps my books where we deliver them around here. So Dave said, well, Dale and I are going to eat dinner. Just go in the kitchen and I got 4 boxes there for you. Just going to get. So I walked in and there's a guy sitting on the couch watching the Georgia Florida game. And there's Larry Brown. And I'm like, whoa, Coach Brown. So I sat there and talked to him for about an hour, got some great stories. But he said this is his all-time favorite because he was so close to Dick Kepler. And so Larry has been great as far as telling people about it. And then we got a great quote from him, and he's been very helpful. But I point this out because that's a photo that had never been published. Another photo, this is from, I'm not sure what paper that is, but what I did with some of the really good photos, this is from 1955, is I found this incredible colorization artist in Sweden, and she colorizes some of the photos that are really sharp. Some of the best ones are from from the 50s, and to be honest with you, until color came in the 70s. These photos from the 50s, they used negatives about this big. So when you get a photo like this, then they progressed and they're using 35mm photos in the 60s, negatives that aren't as good as this one from 1955 of Tony Radovich. But that's a key big part of the book is the photos, finding the photos. That is the story here. This is the UNC bench from 1955 color photo from Sports Illustrated Life. The way I found this was going through the student newspaper each year. I found a little blurb of the Daily Farmville from late January. The Life magazine was coming to Chapel Hill to do a color spread on college basketball. So they went to State, they went to Maryland, they went to Kentucky, and they came to Chapel Hill. And then when the magazine came out 2 or 3 weeks later, they didn't use any of the Duke Carolina color photos that they had shot in Will and Jim. Contacted the rep at Sports Illustrated Life, Getty Images, and said, just a shot in the dark. Here's the article, here's the date. And they had like 10 color photos from the Duke Carolina game from 1955 that they had never published. So that's another unique photo there. Then another find that I had was on the cover of the 1964 UNC Media Guide. There's a color photo, earliest that I had seen, and I went looking for the guy. The credit on him was Doug Sessoms, and I found he was a professor at Chapel Hill, and I guess in the late 50s, early 60s, got some really good camera equipment. So he came over to Raleigh, Chapel Hill, and used color film in 60, 61, 62. So he had 250 color slides from the 60s, and this is one of them. Playing state in Raleigh in 1961. Great photo of Lenny Rosenbluth. From 1955, 56. And then that's me with Lenny last year. Most of you probably know Lenny passed away this summer. A great guy, very helpful. He said that this book, quoting Lenny, is the Mona Lisa of UNC sports books. And let me tell you, I get up here and I go to shows and I do signings and say these things. And there's a part of me that doesn't like to say them because it sounds like I'm bragging. And I'm not one to toot my horn, but at the same time, you got to promote your product, if that makes sense. That's the cover of the next book, Charlie Scott. That's another from a great photographer named Rich Clarkson, who's been shooting Final Fours since the 50s. He was one of Dean Smith's roommates at Kansas in 1952. And he's one of the foremost sports photographers ever. And that's the Charlie Scott playing UCLA second book. This photo here from Doug Sessoms. Bob Lewis broke the UNC single game scoring record in 1965 with 49 points against Florida State. That record has never been broken. It still stands. Jordan didn't break it. Hansford didn't break it. And I hope it's never broken because that night Lewis shot 18 for 25 from the field and 13 for 16 from the line. And I don't know if anybody can be that efficient and score 49 points. And he didn't have a 3-point goal. So what I've been doing on the second book is getting, since a lot of folks weren't alive for the first book, I've been getting the whole former players, getting their stories. And that's going to be the second book beginning in 62. Donnie Walsh helped me with that chapter, Larry Brown for 63, Mike Cook and Billy Cunningham for 64 and 65. 66 and 67, Bob Lewis helped me with those chapters. And what I did is I went up and had lunch with Bob and his wife in August. And so Bob, we were talking on the phone about the 49-point game. And he said to me, you know, I don't save much, but I did save the game ball for that game. But it's just sitting, you know, downstairs. My daughter doesn't want it. I doubt UNC would want it. I said, whoa, Bob, whoa, stop. I think they probably would. They wouldn't want it. So there's me with Bob this summer with the game ball that I brought back with me from Annapolis. Then gave to the museum, so it's in the museum now. So like I say, Phil Ford and Gene Upchurch, they wrote 78. John Kuster and Fred Liger wrote 77. Dave Hanners, Mitch Dupchak are writing 76. I could put together this whole first volume because they had time. I don't have time to write everything for the second one. So I recruited some help. So I think that's it. And I got some brochures here. I've got a book if you want to look at it. Thank you so much for your time. And again, I'm really not this serious.
Thank you, Ron.
One thing I noticed in the book, it seemed like they weren't always the Tar Heels, were they?
No.
Didn't they have different names in the past?
Yes, they were White Phantoms from 1926 to 1948. And the reason they were the White Phantoms is at the Southern Conference tournament in 1925, O.B. Keeler, who was Bobby Jones' biographer, not the basketball player, but the golfer. Bobby Jones, the basketball player. He said their Carolina defense and offense, they wore white uniforms. And he said that they were so quick on both defense and offense. They ran around the court like white ghost because they were so quick, they were just like a flash. And so that became what he started calling the White Phantoms. And then the first sports editor for the Tar Heel name, that he used it in a win over Clemson in 1926. And then Billy Carmichael's son in 1948, as this editor of the Tar Heel said, enough with these different names, we're just gonna call them the Tar Heels. So that's it.
Okay.
And please accept this cup as a.
Thank you, our appreciation.
Thank you. I love that. I collect mugs. So
Very good. Thank you again.
You guys switch back. And thank you to Jean-Luc for handling the AV today. Appreciate that.
Would everybody stand for the 4-way test? We'll conclude the meeting. Of the things we think, say, and do, is it true? Is it fair? Be beneficial to all. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
One thing.